Good afternoon, everyone. I'll let everyone trickle in and we'll start momentarily. So if you have food in the microwave, you still have time to grab it. If you can hear us, please type in the chat box and make sure you change the feature to all panelists and attendees, or else this will send information just to the panelist. Please share with us where you are joining us from today and your class year from VCU. Alumni, we want to know when you graduated, what program you graduated from, and students that are tuning in, we want to hear when you plan to graduate and what you're studying. We also have faculty and staff with us today, so please share if that applies to you. And we warmly welcome families of current students today as well. So if you're a parent or family member of a current RAM, please share that proudly in the chat feature and on Facebook Live in the comments. Let us know so that we can see that. Thanks for joining us today for a webinar with VCU Alumni called The Right to Vote, Election Integrity and Advocacy. My name is Dr. Amy Graybeck. I'm the Executive Director for Alumni Relations and a proud alumna of the School of Education from 2019. We will be recording this webinar and captioning it and sharing it on our YouTube channel for later viewing. And you can catch all of our previous virtual programs and Q&As on the VCU Alumni YouTube channel. VCU Alumni has been offering a number of virtual lifelong learning and personal and professional development webinars. And the next one we have is actually tomorrow, and it's called Alumni Finance Webinar Series, Making Sense of Your Credit. So we hope that you will join us for that as well. As promised, we have been marketing these super cool VCU Votes T-Shirts. So the first 50 people to register and attend today, those will be hopefully making it to your doorstep by early next week. Take a photo in it, tag us at VCU Alumni. After you mail in your vote or you go to the polls, we would love to see you rocking it. We are also currently reading One Person, No Vote in the VCU Alumni Book Club, which is also the common book for VCU this year. So I'll put a link in the chat box, but if you happen to not get a t-shirt for this event, the next opportunity to get one is to let us know your thoughts on the common book through the VCU Alumni Book Club platform by leaving a comment in that platform, and we will send you the shirt. The website is www.pbc.guru/VCU, but again, I'll put it in the comments. Today, we do have some questions to get us kicked off. In addition to some submitted questions from the registration form, we had tons of questions from the registration form. So I'm excited that people are really excited for this webinar. But you, as an attendee, can put questions in the chat feature or in the Q&A feature on the webinar or in Facebook comments, and we will try to get to those as time permits. So now, to get started to the good stuff, I'd like to introduce you to our moderator for this afternoon, Dr. Alex Keena. Alex Keena is an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science at VCU. He researches political science representation in elections and is the co-author of Gerrymandering in America, the House of Representatives, the Supreme Court, and the Future of Popular Sovereignty. He completed his Ph.D. in political science at the University of California, Irvine, his BA at Loyola University, Chicago, and his AS at J. Sargent Reynolds Community College. Dr. Keena, welcome, and thank you for moderating our expert alumni panel today.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. And as the only person here that it did not actually go to VCU, I feel humbled and honored to be asked to moderate this. We have a really, really awesome group of panelists. I'm going to briefly introduce them in alphabetical order, but then I want to go around and let them introduce themselves. So first, we have Mark Cheatham, who completed his BSW in social work in 2005. You'll know Mark as the founder of the Cheats movement. He's also the director of constituency services for Senator Tim Kaine here in Richmond. Next, we have Madeline Doan, correct? Who got her BA in political science and international relations earlier this year. She's a Virginia State coordinator for the Campus Vote project. And last but not least, we have Chris Piper, who received his BA in political science in 2001. He is the Virginia commissioner. He's the commissioner of the Virginia Department of Elections. So as you can see, we have an excellent group, but I want to let each panelist, starting with Mark, talk a little bit about what they do and who they are.
Thanks so much, Alex. I hope everyone can hear me just fine. Like Alex said, my name is Mark Cheatham. You can all call me Cheats. Everybody calls me Cheats. And I am the Director of Casework and Constituent Services for Tim Kaine. It's a job that I had while Tim Kaine was his governor. And I was also, actually, I did some of it as in the governor's office. And then obviously I took that job over as well in the Senate office. In addition to that, as Alex has mentioned, in 2011, I started what started as a blog. It's kind of moved into a whole digital brand of all kinds of different things, but it's called the Cheats Movement, and it is focused on community activity, enrichment, and activism through the lens of hip-hop culture. So it was one of those things that I felt at the time was really needed. A community voice was needed for a certain demographic, Black and brown people that grew up listening to hip hop culture, and expressed kind of social activism through that realm. So I'm wearing two hats, and I will give a quick caveat before we move on, is that I am, like many of you, a parent in this COVID age. Also, so me and my wife are sharing an office right now, and you might see my 5-year-old walk in as he's doing his virtual learning here in Henrico County. So it's just a blessing to be here. I'm excited to answer some questions, and thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much. And I also have a 5-year-old who's learning virtually downstairs. I don't think she's going to come in, but if she does, it's okay. We're all in this together. I think we.
Okay,
we
Kim will be excited to see Marlo.
Yeah. So Madeline, why don't you go next?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Madeline. I am a recent graduate from Virginia Commonwealth University, and I am the Virginia State Coordinator for Campus Vote Project. We are a national nonpartisan organization that works to increase voter education, voter registration, and voter turnout rate at colleges throughout the U.S. And I work with all of our fellows, campus administrators, and faculty members throughout the state of Virginia. We have about 15 to 20 partner schools, and super excited to be on this panel and talking with you all today.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Madeline. Okay, let's hand it off to Chris.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm real excited to be here, but I realized when everybody was being introduced that I have transitioned to the old man on the panel. So, but very glad to be here. And I've been commissioner for the Virginia Department of Elections since February of 2018. I was appointed by Governor Ralph Northam. And for years, I've worked in the Department of Elections in various roles and a couple of other things that I've done in between. But the role of the commissioner of the Department of Elections is I'm the chief election official for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the Department of Elections oversees the administration of the election throughout the Commonwealth. Each locality, county, and city is actually responsible for the administration of the election. The Department of Elections provides the resources and the support services for them to be able to do so. And it's our job to ensure the uniformity of elections throughout the Commonwealth. You can basically say we're like the McDonald's for the Commonwealth. We make sure that no matter where you go to vote, you have the same uniform experience throughout the Commonwealth. So really, again, glad to be here and glad to participate. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. And as you can see, we have a wonderful mix of different panelists who offer very different perspectives. And I just can't wait to see how these perspectives inform our discussion today. So the first question is kind of like a very general question. There's no order. Anybody who wants to just jump in, as long as we hear from everyone. The question is, how has COVID-19 impacted the work that you do?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. It's impacted it tremendously. Prior to COVID, well, just prior to this year even, Virginia elections were conducted on one day, essentially. We had absentee voting, but you needed to have an excuse. But the vast majority of votes were cast on election day in the Commonwealth. In fact, in 2016, only about 12% of our votes were cast early prior to election day of all the votes that turned out in 2016. This year already, we're close to 900,000 requests for absentee ballots. You don't need an excuse anymore. Just on Friday, we had a little over 34,000 people show up to vote on Friday in Virginia. So we've seen that tremendously. The fact of the matter is coronavirus has impacted elections because in order to enforce social distancing, packing everybody into a single polling location is really, really difficult, on top of the fact that our election officers traditionally are of the high-risk category just by virtue of their age. So we've had to recruit relentlessly for election officers. So it's really kind of flipped the election process in Virginia upside down in a good way. I think that, as we'll see and talk about, a lot of positive things have come out of this.
Excellent. Why don't we go next to Madeline?
Great, thank you. Yeah, so COVID-19 has definitely impacted a lot of the work that I'm doing, especially given the fluctuating nature of whether or not students are on campus or off campus. And much of the work that I do with our fellows, and much in general of the work that the fellows are doing, is in-person voter engagement. So, with tomorrow being National Voter Registration Day, usually our fellows are hosting massive events on campus and interacting with hundreds or thousands of students. So it's definitely changed the ways in which our fellows are interacting with fellow students and their community members to ensure that everyone has all the information about the upcoming elections and how they can be registered to vote and get out to vote. I think a positive thing that I've seen is that there is a lot of cross-campus collaborations, and there is greater accessibility of some of the events since they are all on Zoom, which has been something that's super exciting to see. I do think another issue and concern that I have, a lot of our fellows are having, is the confusion of if they're an out-of-state student or in-state student. That is already kind of a big question that people will ask when they are registering to vote. But because everyone, people aren't sure where they are going to be around November 3rd, that's definitely impacting a lot of the work that I'm doing with students.
Okay, very good. Mark?
It's changed tremendously. So just for an example, working in the U.S. Senate office, especially a state office in Richmond, we're in charge of doing casework and constituent relations for everyone throughout the state, which includes 6 offices throughout the state in D.C. And we've been home since March. I haven't been in the office of the U.S. Senate office since March. And that means that for someone like myself, whose job is to interact with constituents every day, all day, they can't come to the office, right? So they can't come to the office. We're not at the office. Staff is adjusted quite a bit, but we're not able to pick up the phone as much. And we're doing all of this in the middle of a global pandemic where the needs are greater. So, a veterans check or a social security check means a lot more. It always means a lot, but it means a lot more in this climate. So you add that with the issues that we weren't expecting to deal with, that we had to deal with repatriation flights and U.S. citizens overseas during border shutdowns. I couldn't get home. U.S. passports, the passport office shut down for months. So there are people that need to travel for business. They need to travel to keep their job. They need their visa issues. There's so many things that is happening that has changed just fundamentally how any congressional office or U.S. Senate office does business in this time. And just to be frank, it's not easy. You can't, I'm sure Chris or others can tell you, like, the reputation on in-person government interaction, whether warranted or not, is difficult. But now it's even more difficult because most of those office buildings are closed, and you can't do kind of face-to-face and in-person activity. And I do think that, as Madeline mentioned as well, that translates into a community aspect as well. So it's really hard for someone that's actually focused on, kind of highlighting activities of the community when there are no community activities. Or the community activities that you can do have to be virtual or social distance. So it does make it extremely difficult. And I think everybody, as we mentioned, is doing their best to adjust in real time and adjust on the fly. And especially with elections coming up in, very, very short time.
It's really interesting. One of the things that I heard from Chris and Madeline's response is that in some ways, there are opportunities to change how we do business, and this can actually be a positive aspect. But I'm kind of interested in asking a follow-up question to Madeline and Chris. What are some of the biggest obstacles that you've seen in this extremely unorthodox election year? What are some of the biggest challenges that you worry about? Some of your anxieties?
Well, I just how to do it. First of all, when the lockdown started in March, we were preparing for a May general election. A lot of localities, cities had an election, and then we had a June primary. We were lucky enough with our timing to be a Super Tuesday state, so our presidential primary had ended. But I think the biggest obstacle was, the wheels of government don't typically move very fast, and that's by design in some ways. But in this pretty critical junction, we had to move quickly and make a lot of changes to the way we do things. And first of all, it's just procuring PPE for our election officers, and then it was making changes to simple things like absentee voting. We don't do it a lot here in Virginia, so we didn't have a real strong ballot tracking software, and didn't have some other regulations in place that other vote by mail states have in place. So we had to kind of learn a lot in a relatively short amount of time, and start moving the wheels of government a whole lot quicker than before. So it's exciting, but I think what's at the end of the day, the best news is that we were headed in this direction. We just had to move there a little bit quicker, and I'm real excited for the future of elections in Virginia as a result of all this.
Great, Madeline. If you want to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that some of my biggest concerns are particularly for first-year college students. If this is the first time that they are voting in any election, especially for a traditional student who's like 18 to 19, this is the first time they're voting in a presidential election. It's already a really intimidating process to cast your ballot and to be registered to vote and to know who you're going to vote for down the entire ballot, right? Like a lot of the information that is out that is super public is just about the presidential election. And while that is incredibly important, I am particularly nervous about college students being informed about what all is going to be on their ballot at the local level, and how to discern what information is, valid and 100% accurate. I have been seeing, with a lot of my fellows, them getting the dates wrong in terms of early in-person voting, or not knowing the deadlines to register to vote, or the deadline to request an absentee ballot. And so while I think that, it's super great that there is the no excuse absentee ballot and there is the early in-person voting, given that many people don't have any experience with this, it's just ensuring that we're constantly providing that information and making sure that people know exactly what you might be able to expect from early in-person voting and absentee. Granted, we all have to be flexible because we never know 100% what it's going to look like. But I think just being upfront with the people that we're working with and telling them, this is generally what you might expect, and providing resources for if there are issues when they do come to cast their ballot is super helpful.
Great, thanks. It's interesting. I have noticed, and I'm sure everyone who's attending has noticed, that this year in particular, there is quite a bit of distrust of government institutions. I've never really seen this level of distrust at any other time in my recollection. And so maybe I can ask Mark this, because Mark, you're situated in kind of a unique position here. What do you think people in Richmond, people on the ground, either through your interactions as Director of Constituency Services or just through the Cheats movement, what are some of their anxieties about how the election is going to be administered? Do people have any specific worries that you've noticed, that you've picked up on?
I think there is, and full disclosure, I'm going to be probably the most partisan person on the panel. So for all
That's okay.
all apologies to Chris and Madeline, because I'm sure they're doing the Lord's nonpartisan work, and I understand it as government officials have to do. But I do have to say that I believe this distrust is something that obviously kind of mounts in community over time. I do think that distrust in institutions has kind of gone on steroids since this particular administration has taken office. And I do have to say that it's because it actually comes from the top. A lot of what you hear is if something comes counter to kind of the belief of a particular administration, then the actual executive in chief of the president of the United States says, don't believe this. And it's very difficult for you to have trust in an institution, especially I think it's going to be particularly challenging no matter how the results come down, whether you believe in polling or not, especially at the top of the ticket, it's going to be a close election. There's going to be no runaway situation with this election. And it's been quoted as recently as this week. The president of the United States says, basically, if I lose, it's fraud. So it's fraud from mail-in ballots, and it's fraud from, we don't know what happens. And this is, to be frank, it's a president that votes by mail. So we have to really kind of understand the giant landscape. And I would say if it came from the other political party and the other side, it would still be that growing level of distrust. I think this particular president has made it a new art in regards to sowing distrust into things that may challenge authority, and his authority in particular. And I do think that has an impact from the top down. And I think it affects, even like you mentioned, Alex, our local elections. We have students and VCU students taken to the streets to express their opinions about the things that they want to see changed. And it for better or for worse, it kind of becomes in vogue to see something doesn't go your way and to actually question the legitimacy of it. And I wish we weren't here, and I wish this wasn't the case, but it's really difficult to have a lot of trust in just about anything if from everyone on down you're hearing that things are delegitimized. Now, with that said, I will say before moving on, we have extreme trust in the electoral process, especially in Virginia. I'm excited, like Chris had mentioned, about where we're going with mail-in ballots. The more people that vote, the better. And I think we have to question if there's anything that is trying to restrict people from voting. So I have extreme confidence in what's happening in Virginia, and in the direction. I'm extremely pleased about the direction we're going with voting across the nation. But the ground level trust is going to be difficult to bring back, even no matter who wins the election in November.
That's a really interesting perspective, and I definitely want to let Chris weigh in on this, but I did want to ask Madeline. Relating to this last question, one of the things I've noticed, Madeline and I both work with college students. One of the things I've noticed is that this generation of college students coming of age after 9/11, their entire upbringing has been shaped during this constant crisis and instability. And I've noticed there are a couple specific areas where college students are particularly worried, perhaps certain anxieties. One of them that I've noticed is the security of mail-in voting. And I just wanted to see if you could speak to that. Have you noticed in your efforts, in your outreach efforts, that there are any specific anxieties that college students have, or certain areas where they're a little skeptical about how our electoral institutions function?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a major concern that a lot of college students have is ensuring that if they send in their absentee ballot, that it is going to be counted. And, also in that same line, that it is going to arrive at their polling location in time. I know that's especially a big concern that people are addressing this year, which is why we're encouraging people, if you get your absentee ballot, try and turn it in as soon as possible. I think, a really big barrier in that same realm is when you have students who live in a college dorm and their mailing address is different from the physical location of their dorm, when they're going to register to vote, it's not going to sync up. And that can be something that's pretty confusing on the voter registration forms, because it only says that it's mandatory for you to fill in your location of residence. But then there's a drop-in section of if you have a PO box or a mailing address. And that's something that when I was a student at VCU, we came across quite a bit, was that students were not filling in those registration forms correctly. And so then if that's something that I'm concerned about this year, is if students are in a dorm and they're requesting an absentee ballot, have they filled out their ballot adequately and effectively? And a lot of that just comes down to who is doing the voter registration. And I know that that's another kind of concern that some college students will have, is when there are people canvassing on colleges or encouraging people to register to vote, whether or not their information is going to be secure and where that information is going to. So I do think it is a really big concern, but I think that, as Chris mentioned, a lot of the new efforts to be tracking the absentee ballots is going to be incredibly helpful and reassuring.
So Chris, perhaps you could speak to two issues that Madeline raised. One of them is the integrity of our mail-in voting system, particularly because we're going to have a huge influx of mail-in ballots, as you noted from the very beginning, but also about how college students in their unique situation should best handle filling out absentee ballot requests so that they avoid problems.
Yeah, thank you for that. So with regard to the mail-in process, a couple of things that we've done in Virginia. First, the ballots now, as long as they're postmarked by election day, can arrive in the registrar's office till Friday at noon. And that allows for some time for the process to run through in the United States Postal Service. We also moved the deadline for requesting an absentee ballot back from 7 days to 11 days, recognizing that it does take a while for the mail to work its way through. On top of that, the General Assembly during the special session this year introduced a cure process, and that's now law for the November 3rd, 2020 election. And the cure process is just like Madeline was talking about. If a ballot comes back to a registrar's office and it's missing information that would normally cause it to be rejected, the registrar actually has 3 days to contact the voter, let them know of the deficiency and the error, and gives them an opportunity to correct it. And they'll have till November 6th at noon to come in and correct that, or they can request a new ballot. So that's certainly it. To that point, like everybody was saying, education is key here. And we actually rolled out a campaign last week called Free to Be Absentee that talks about the absentee process and talks about voting early, getting it done early. And I would encourage everybody, no matter what, request your ballot now or go in person to vote. And you can do that started on Friday. But you can request your ballot now, get it back to the locality. Again, you can track it and you'll know when it's been received and all of that stuff. So that's really important and critical. We need to spread out election day this year beyond the November 3rd and make it for 45 days. And I think we need to keep doing that for every election going forward. The fallacy of trying to have an election day in 13 hours is just, it's ridiculous. So speaking about the students, again, requesting a ballot early, requesting it now is critical. The other thing I would point out is one of the things that we've been concerned about, and we saw at UNC Chapel Hill, students had requested ballots and then they were sent home. And we saw that at JMU and they were sent home. The important information is if you have requested a ballot to be sent to you and then maybe you have to go home or something like that, reach out to your registrar's office, contact them. There are ways in which they can help you cure that issue as well. The other thing to do is there are 43 days now between election day and today. If you have an opportunity where you're going to be home, get home a little early on a Friday, stop by your registrar's office, go ahead and cast a ballot. Or if you're registered at your college address, you can, again, go now. Get the vote over now. The latest poll I saw was 6% of people are undecided. So I'm pretty sure that means most of you are ready to cast your ballot, and this is a good opportunity to do it.
Just a follow-up question, Chris. We have live users submitting questions, and Lauren asks about when absentee ballots are counted. If you watch TV on election night, one of the things you notice is that the results of the mail-in ballots are usually not incorporated into the official returns until after election day, or at least after in-person voting is closed. Could you just briefly explain how this is handled in Virginia, how it will be handled this year, and whether it's any different than it has been in past years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think what we're preaching left and right is we got to get rid of this thought about election night or election day. It's election week, and the results will take several days. Simple in Virginia because ballots can keep coming in for 2.5 days after election night. But in Virginia, we're allowed to pre-process. There's no prohibition on pre-processing absentee ballots. So what happens is I'll get my absentee ballot today, I'll fill it out, I'll mail it in. When it gets to the registrar's office, in front of election officers, they'll have one officer representing each party and usually a third one. And then what they're doing is they're opening up the ballots. They're first making sure that there's no issues with the envelope, the return envelope. And then they will open the ballots and they will actually put the ballots through the machine. Now they're not counted at that point in time because they can't pull the information off of the machine, but it's the same kind of machine that you cast your ballot in at the polling place. And then after election night is over, once they've run all the ballots that have come in through that through election day, then they will pull that machine and have that tape. So we will have in Virginia everything pretty much through 7 p.m. counted and available to the public that evening. But the problem, not the problem, but the situation in other states like Michigan right now, they can't touch those absentee ballots until election day. So you think about, we've already had almost 1 million requests come in. They're going to be in the same boat, several million ballots coming back. It will take them several days to get through that process. In Virginia, we're a little bit lucky in the sense that we can do that ahead of time.
Thank you for that very thorough response. I think this is very helpful to a number of people. One of the things that's complicated about our public discussions about voting in elections is that there's really multiple issues at stake here. One of them is that the integrity of the system, which was publicized after 2016 in terms of coordinated efforts, international efforts to undermine the integrity of our election system. In some ways, we actually have systems because there's 50 states plus DC that have their own election systems, including Virginia. But I want to shift to another aspect of our electoral system, which is voting rights. Voting rights kind of gets lumped into this broader discussion, but I want to talk to Mark and Madeline and ask perhaps a question that's somewhat personal, subjective. What is the state of our voting rights? Because it's worth noting that 100 years ago, women weren't even allowed to vote in the United States. And as recently as 50 years ago, many African Americans did not have access to registering to vote in the United States. And so this is a recent conversation. And thus far, at least in the 20th century, it seems like the trend has been towards increasing voting rights. But in the last decade, we've seen a number of laws that would appear to infringe on individual voting rights. So I want to ask Mark and Madeline how you feel about the state of our voting rights and whether this affects people's perceptions about our election system and our democracy. Sorry, I realize it's a pretty heavy question.
Madeline, you can go first if you like. Or no, it doesn't matter.
You can go first.
Sure. Well, what I will say is that it's something that one of the things that I would say, start with a positive, is that it's something that I think advocates and local elected officials, state officials, even to federal to an extent, are aware of. they're aware of kind of the challenges and discrepancies on voter rolls. And as you mentioned, the biggest challenge is that these things are state by state in regards to what, General Assemblies have to do in their respective states to kind of open up the voting rolls. And so what we've seen in Virginia, especially, probably for the last, I don't know how many governors, even to an extent bipartisan, is granting more rights for, maybe former offenders that need to get their rights restored, and opening up rolls, and, just kind of allowing that system to be a little bit more easier to prevent restrictions from voting. And so one of the things that Virginia has done in there, it seems to be every session there's kind of more legislation put in to kind of expand the voter rolls in the state of Virginia and make it easier for people to get their rights back to be able to vote. And those things actually are, I think, a help to the system. And so we have gone a long way in a sense to being aware of what the problem is, and to actually trying to have advocates and legislators put in legislation, if you will, to expand voter rolls. Now, there are extreme challenges to that, and one of the biggest glaring ones that just recently happened not too long ago is in Georgia, right? Where the gubernatorial race for Georgia with Stacey Abrams and now the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. Kemp was the attorney general running for governor and systematically removed, thousands of Georgians off the rolls to vote, with the impression that the more people that voted, the better it would be for his opponent, which is really, really difficult to swallow. And that is not foreign. It's a little bit more, I think, aggressive in Georgia, but for this particular race, and it was a national profile race, so it was pretty high. But that is not foreign as you go through state to state and look at the restrictions and barriers to voting, even in 2020. So, while Virginia, I say, is aware, and they're doing things seems like they're doing things every General Assembly session to make the state of voting a little bit more open and easier for all Virginians. It is not that way universally throughout all 50 states. Some people are more progressive than Virginia and a little bit more allowing, and some people are different. The state of it, I think, is in flux, but I think the good part is that advocates are aware of it, General Assembly members, legislators are aware of it, and they are actually trying to make moves that would allow a more, if you will, democratic process. I think what people that are listening to this panel should know, and that always kind of try to tell people, especially college students as well, is that I truly believe that the more people that participate in the process, the more accurate account of you get of our nation and our government and our system. So I'm always weary of any kind of pieces of legislation that restrict people from actually carrying out that process to vote. I think wherever we're going, the answer to wherever we're going as a nation, as a community, is addition is going to beat subtraction. So if we always look at what's adding people versus what's subtracting people, I think we'd be in a better state. I don't know if that answers it exactly, but I will stop there, Madeline.
It's okay. I don't even remember what my question was.
I think it's the state of where we are with voting.
Maybe, Madeline, if I can modify your question, are there any particular voting rights concerns that you have come across in your work that you think are particularly urgent or important?
Yeah, I think a major thing is, while some of it may not be clear-cut voter suppression in legislation, there are still particular attacks. A major issue that I have seen, especially with college students and young folks, is transportation to polling locations. That is something that a lot of people have major issues with, especially if, like right now, with a lot of polling locations shutting down, is how are they going to physically get to a polling location, and are they going to have to use their personal money to get to a polling location? And so I think that hits on a variety of issues, right? Of like what is the status of transportation in an area? What are all the different polling locations? What are the hours for those polling locations? As well as just like what is the overall culture of voting in a particular community, and are the candidates speaking to that to all communities or just certain groups? So as I said, like I don't think there's some really great progress in terms of lifting voter suppression in the state. I think a great thing is some of the new changes with the voter ID laws in Virginia. That's really great that there have been some changes on that line. And that's definitely something super positive, but I would say that kind of looking at some of more of the intersectional issues that are already casting people aside and impacting their day-to-day life, whether it's, the current state of evictions here in Richmond or the economic situation that a lot of people are facing. It's not directly or necessarily like designed to impact their ability to get out to vote, but in many ways it still can be a deterrent or an impingement.
Excellent. All right. I want to pivot. Thus far, we've been talking about some of the problems and some of the anxieties with our voting and the forthcoming election. But I want to ask, what can we do to help? What can normal folks, ordinary folks, do to help ensure that this election is a success? And we had a number of user questions about accessibility to the polls. For example, people who have disabilities, whether they have access, how normal people can volunteer and ensure voter registration and accessibility. This is one question that Andrea from Richmond had. Perhaps Chris, you can speak to this. I think you're on mute, Chris.
There you go. Sorry. I got kicked. So I don't know if you all can hear me and see me and all that, but okay, cool. What you can do to help. The main thing is, quite a bit. The officers of election, as I mentioned at the top, and that by the very nature puts them in a high risk category, recruiting like crazy, and would really love for you all to sign up. You can go to our website.
So just to ask a question, Chris, who is eligible to be an officer of an election, and what does that actually entail for folks who may not be as well versed as us on this panel?
Yeah, good question. So all you have to do, you can work anywhere. You don't have to be a registered voter in the locality in which you choose. But typically we try and link you up with your locality. But it is you can work as an election officer prior to the election. That process is pretty incredibly necessary. And then on election day, required. It's just a matter of checking in voters. And there are election day and just working with the voters themselves to work through those issues and to ensure has equal access to the ballot, etc. And it can be a long day, but about it is being behind the scenes and seeing how elections are actually in Virginia. I think at the end of the day, it makes you an advocate for how the integrity of the elections are held. What we do in America to make the votes count.
Fantastic. So I think on my end, you were cutting out a little bit there, but I think the message is if you are able and you are and you're healthy and you're not sort of an at-risk category, you should absolutely volunteer with the Commonwealth to become an election official. This is what makes our democracy run. It takes volunteers to make it run, and it's only as good as the work that we're willing to put in. Madeline, do you have any opportunities for volunteerism with your organization? Do you rely on volunteers? Is there anything that ordinary people can do to help college students during this election?
Yeah, absolutely. So our organization has been recruiting a lot of poll workers and poll worker volunteers. So if anyone is a student or anyone is interested in volunteering for poll working, either leading up to the elections or on election day, you can definitely reach out to me, and I can get people in touch with our regional poll worker coordinator in the Southeast. So that's also open if anyone who is here is in like North Carolina or South Carolina, some nearby states. They're doing a lot of poll worker recruitment. I will also say another organization that I've been doing some partnering with that is doing recruitment is the Virginia Civic Engagement Table. I've signed up to volunteer with them. There are a variety of volunteer opportunities. You can be volunteering on election day, or you can also volunteer ahead of time and set up some of the signs guiding voters to the polling location, things of that nature. Also too, I think just like a major thing is checking in with your friends and family members and asking if they've checked their voter registration status, if they have a plan to vote. It can be a really casual conversation, but just have it like making that a normal thing leading up to the elections is super important.
Mark, I don't know if you have anything to add. You're welcome to add anything.
I was really glad about exactly what Madeline said in the last piece. I think that what we can do it's on a kind of community level. This is civic engagement, right? It's just having conversations with your friends and your family. And I think a lot of people, even today, even after Chris has explained we have 40-something days that we can submit our ballots, they kind of look at this, some of this process is just a hassle. And they don't understand or haven't processed how simple it is and how we can make it as normal as possible. And actually a part of restoring the faith and restoring the faith in the system and the process is actually participating in it. I think the people that participate in it actually feel a lot closer and engaged in the process and have a little bit more belief in the process. And so on a community level, it's not just the kind of the big grandiose events that we probably won't have in 2020, to be frank. We're not going to have thousands of people coming out to concerts to register to vote and those things. So it will be a little bit more intimate. It will be a little bit more one-on-one. But those conversations and letting them know how easy the process is and everything that Virginia has done to make it so you can vote from home, you can vote in advance. I think that'll go a long way to actually helping and encouraging people to be a part of the process and making sure that they know that it's something that you can do pretty painlessly.
Well, thank you all for those responses. I want to sort of shift here a little bit. We probably have time for at least one more question, maybe two, but I want to ask you, since you were all VCU alum, how did your experiences at VCU sort of prepare you for this role that you're in right now, or perhaps sort of inform your view of the world such that you took these choices in life that led to you performing the duties that you're performing here today? So maybe you can talk a little bit about your experiences at VCU and how that shaped who you've become. Anyone can go first.
I can go. So when I was at VCU, I was studying political science and international studies, and I found that I really wanted to have a space on campus to be engaging with other students that were really passionate about getting out to vote. And so that's why over the course of my 4 years at VCU, I formed the Vcu Votes Coalition, which is still there and now housed in Honors College as well as in the Office of Student Affairs. And that was something that was super important for me, was just, again, normalizing those conversations with other students about elections and what is on our ballot and how we can get engaged in the local community. I think for me, a main reason that I am in this position that I am in now was just being motivated by all the student power around me, as well as students getting super active in the Richmond community. I will say that it's super important for college students to be mindful of the bubble that they're in when they're on a college campus. and be really intentional about how their actions are impacting the greater community outside. And so that's why I wanted to stay on. And, when I was at VCU, I actually was a democracy fellow. And so now I'm managing all the democracy fellows with CVP in Virginia, which is super exciting. But that's something that I encourage all of my fellows to do, is be really mindful of when they're doing this voter education and engagement work, is not limiting their efforts to just college students, but college employees as well as community members at large. And again, just recognizing that, if you are fortunate to have the right to vote and you are able to cast a ballot, recognizing not only that you're expressing your voice, but like how many other people in your community at large may not have the right to vote for whatever reason, and taking their concerns into consideration, so that you're amplifying the concerns that community members are facing as well.
I think I have a little bit of a unique case. When I was, I guess it was my junior year at VCU, I walked into an internship at the lieutenant governor's office, and the lieutenant governor at the time was Tim Kaine. And so I did a summer internship for my junior year in the lieutenant governor's office. And then fast forward to 15 years later, I still work for the same. I haven't had a real job since, is what I tell folks. And what I would say is, working in the lieutenant governor's office my junior year at VCU, and then fast forwarded to the summer of my senior year, we were actually on a full-fledged governor's race, the 05 governor's race, and being able to have, VCU, just to be frank, was kind of the catalyst to allow me to even explore those types of internships and explore those types of opportunities. But then actually having those opportunities and experiences, and then bringing them back to a place as diverse as VCU. One of the reasons I love VCU, and I still love it, is because you could walk down any kind of street, any environment at VCU, and based on what floor you're on or what street you're on, it's a completely different experience, and it's a completely different, just an array of diversity. And so applying my experiences from VCU, and then obviously coming and being a student and being in class and learning from different people with all different types of walks of life and different backgrounds, it really made civic engagement, it made community activism, it made community engagement really hit home for me. And I found those kind of universal strings that we can all kind of pull together. VCU made it a lot easier to find those universal strings, but we could find those universal strings and apply them as we went forward. So I credit kind of the diversity and the opportunity that VCU provided to a lot of a big part of the career that I have today. And it started kind of right there on campus. So it was a big help for me.
I'm going to jump right on top of what Cheat said. I was going to an unnamed college, and I was really excited about political philosophy and theory and just political science in general. And at one point we were discussing some pretty heavy topics, and everybody in my class was saying the same thing that I was saying and coming from the same perspective. And I looked around and I said, oh my gosh, it's a bunch of middle-class white kids. No wonder we all have the same perspective. And my brother went to VCU. I had some friends that went to VCU, and I loved the diversity that I was seeing around campus. Not just racially, but like from different walks of life, older, younger, and economic classes, all in one place. And I thought, this is a great place to be. And it was everything I ever wanted it to be. That diversity of thought really gave me a perspective that I didn't really truly appreciate before or have before. And I've been able to utilize that going forward. I immediately went into a career in politics, and here I am. But I'll never forget, I got a call from former Deputy Secretary of Administration. He was a graduate student, Felix Sarfa-Contenka, and he invited me to the debate between George Allen and Chuck Robb. And we had CBS 6 was there, and I was just real excited about the whole elections process. But those were the kind of opportunities that VCU offered. And the discussions that I had in all my classes were just really took me to another level. And I was real excited to have that opportunity, and proud VCU alum as a result.
Well, I can't thank you enough for this lively discussion and for sharing a little bit of yourselves with our audience of alums today. I'm going to hand it off because I think we're out of time. I'm going to give this back to Amy. But thank you to everyone who's tuned in, and it's been a real pleasure. And thank you to our panelists.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. I want to thank our moderator, Dr. Alex Keena, and each of our expert panelists, Madeline, Mark, and Chris. VCU alumni, faculty, staff, and family members of current students appreciate your expertise and experience you bring to this topic. Your time is incredibly valuable, as we know and recognize this is obviously a very busy time for you. So we just really appreciate and we're so grateful for the work that you do, the awareness we can build, and we want to thank you for answering our questions live today. We will be reposting this webinar to Facebook and YouTube for closed captioning for later viewing. For those on the webinar, we will also be sending a follow-up email and providing links to resources mentioned in this webinar. If you registered for this webinar, you're going to get a shirt. If you registered and attended, you're going to get a shirt. So we'll be sending you a shirt to the address you provided when you registered. YouTube panelists, don't worry. We have linked to a survey in the chat box. We would love for you to complete. We really, truly value your feedback and want to do more of the things that you want us to do, want us to improve. So please fill that out and let us know how we did and how we can better for you. If you've enjoyed listening and learning from our political science department, please consider supporting the department with a gift. The political science department relies on the generosity of its alumni and from our community to support its teaching mission, research, and offering great learning opportunities like the one you enjoyed today. So to give, I put that in the chat box and on Facebook. Please visit www.support.vcu.edu/give, and you can just search for political science and that'll pop up. Obviously, our alumni are graduates of all different departments, but we really appreciate you kind of giving to that today. Thanks again to our moderator, Dr. Keena, and panelists, Mark, Madeline, and Chris, and we will see you soon. Go Rams and go vote. Thanks, everyone.